This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed and subscribe to this channel. Candidate Donald Trump back in 2024 ran on a promise to end our forever wars while bringing down inflation, and boy, has he kept that promise, which is why his approval ratings are now at record lows. 33% of Americans approve of the job Donald Trump is doing. Those must be the Americans rooting against our own country, who Trump keeps talking about, the enemy within. Several new polls out, the Washington Post saying just 15% of Americans claim they strongly approve of the job Donald Trump is doing. That's the enemy within. That's what is left of his MAGA base. All he's got are hardcore Republicans, which is why he has to suppress the vote or claim election fraud. The new Economist YouGov poll showing Trump's approval rating inside his own party has now cratered 15 points since he returned to the Oval Office. So without Republicans voting in this year's midterms and more Democrats voting, the midterms could end up being the blue wave some are forecasting. The strategy, voter intimidation, voter suppression, and inconvenience Democratic voters, which is why the Justice Department just announced it will deploy 1,000, quote, unquote, election observers for the midterms. Well, why would they do that? To imitate Mussolini, but to intimidate and also to make the case after the midterms there was voter fraud in any district where a Republican candidate went down to defeat. Remember, we now have an attorney general repeatedly saying the 2020 presidential election was stolen. He says there's tons of evidence to support his claim, and yet can't produce a single shred. Trump, through the SAVE Act, wants to make same-day voting the norm and do away with mail-in ballots, which make it too easy for you and average Democratic voters to cast a ballot. Mail-in ballots, for example, mean you don't have to wait in 12-hour lines in Georgia or take off work or find transportation to the polls. Problems for the poor and working class who are more likely or should be more likely to vote for Democrats arise when they have to show up on Election Day. And Trump despises mail-in ballots, which he describes as crooked and inherently corrupt. Donald Trump hates mail-in ballots so much that in 2 separate Florida elections this year, he voted both times using mail-in ballots. We just found out he's voting in the Florida primary using a mail-in ballot. He hates mail-in ballots so much he uses them kind of like immigrants. He hates immigrants so much he's married them twice. Since 2019, Donald Trump has been registered to vote in Palm Beach, Florida. He has voted in practically every one of those elections via mail-in ballot. Before that, he was registered to vote in New York State, and we know that in 2017 and 2018, he voted almost entirely through mail-in ballots. That's how much he despises mail-in ballots. He hates them. Donald Trump claims mail-in ballots make it too easy to cheat. And Trump hates cheating. Just ask his 3 wives. Ask Melania, who just weeks after giving him a son, he returned the favor by having condomless sex with a porn star. Go ahead, ask Melania if you can find her. Where is she? Our First Lady has not made a public appearance in exactly a month, not since the World Cup. Where is she? Well, I guess you can tell from these pictures, the woman is incredibly shy. She's a very private person who keeps things close to the vest when she's wearing one. But where is Melania? She didn't show up for Lindsey Graham's funeral or the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and compared to the first Trump administration, Melania's public appearances have been cut in half. Because unlike her ersatz husband, who had condomless sex with a porn star just weeks after she gave him a son, Melania doesn't like to lie to the American people. Showing up with Donald is a lie. Standing next to Donald, smiling, not wearing a gas mask around him. It's a lie. She doesn't want her life to be a big lie like Lindsey Graham's. That's why we never see her. Which brings me to Natalie Harp, who I'm going to defend, seriously. Now, Democratic Senator John Ossoff, who looks like he's cruising to re-election down in Georgia, gave a terrific speech on Monday eviscerating Trump. And he mocked Trump for spending an inordinate amount of time with Natalie Harp, a 35-year-old blonde executive assistant inside the White House. You might remember when Trump had to sneak out of that NATO summit in Turkey on board the decoy jet, he chose Natalie Harp to accompany him, which has been the subject of great speculation. A lot of people are asking me, David, is Donald Trump sleeping with Natalie Harp? To which I reply, please, I'm eating. Why would you ask me to conjure up the image of Donald Trump's flatulent penis? Donald Trump's penis, not just flaccid, also flatulent. So, look, Natalie Harp reportedly has an unhealthy relationship with Donald Trump. But anyone in close proximity has an unhealthy relationship with Donald Trump. It's safer to breathe in the exhaust pipe from a diesel tractor to be around Donald Trump after he's eaten at McDonald's. Well, they call Natalie Harp the human printer because going back to the wilderness years when Trump was down in Mar-a-Lago playing golf and trying to run again for president, Natalie Harp used a battery-powered printer to hand him, Trump, pages and pages of all the great things being said about him on the internet, great things often she herself had secretly written. Natalie Harp reportedly leaves Donald Trump's notes that read, "You are all that matters to me." Well, yeah, Preston Harp, Natalie's estranged brother, is piling on. He gave an interview with the Daily Mail this week claiming Natalie has a dangerous devotion to our president. What's left out of most, if not all, of the reporting on Natalie Harp is she's a cancer survivor and she views Donald Trump as her savior. We know she was diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer, which coincided with Donald Trump's 2018 decision to sign the Right to Try law. The Right to Try law, which made available more life-saving drugs that had been deemed not yet thoroughly vetted before. So around this time, her bone cancer, after he signed the law, went into remission. Nobody's really certain whether the treatment she received fell under the Right to Try law, but she decided it did, although most doctors say it didn't. Give her a break. Give her a break. Trump likes young blondes who treat him like a father figure. They are surrogate Ivankas without all the sexual tension that you have between Trump and Ivanka. Donald Trump's not having sex with Natalie Harp. He's not having sex with anyone. In fact, Donald really never did have sex with anyone. His physical gratification came from exerting physical dominance over women. And these days, what physical dominance does he have? He's on all these medications. He's consigned to exerting his physical dominance on his golden toilet. Now, in the White House, right before the flushing sound, you can hear Donald's voice echoing throughout the bathroom as he shouts into the bowl, "I own you, bitch. That's right, I own you." That's what he's been left with. So, Donald Trump, he refuses to accept the word no. And a lot of people say, isn't that amazing? I wish I could be like Donald Trump, because no matter how many times voters, judges, juries say no, he keeps going for it. He refuses to take no for an answer. The U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jean Pirro, was forced to drop charges against an Olympic rower who Trump accused of defacing the reflecting pool outside the Lincoln Memorial after it had to be dismissed. The judge said there's no evidence that this Olympic rower damaged the reflecting pool. Doesn't matter. Trump ordered Pirro to charge him yet again. No doesn't mean no. Why? Because it can't possibly be the no-bid contract Trump awarded to a friend with no experience in fixing memorials and this $14 million boondoggle left the reflecting pool leaking and consumed with algae. So it had to be vandals. It had to be vandals. It had to be vandals who destroyed the lawn. It had to be vandals who destroyed the lawn straddling the World War II memorial with the reflecting pool. That's the lawn that got destroyed. Yeah, well, I guess they were vandals who destroyed that land. If by vandals you mean the people who showed up for Trump's big July 4th Salute to America catastrophe, it was those vandals who destroyed the grass. There was a bandstand, there were seats, and of course, 103-degree heat caused by the oil companies, which put Trump into office so they could continue to vandalize the planet. Yes, the lawn was destroyed by vandals, supporters of Trump. So, yeah, you shouldn't vandalize Washington, D.C. Donald Trump hates vandals. He hates them so much, he pardoned all the January 6ers. That's how protective Donald Trump is of federal property. He loves federal property so much, he's knocked down the east wing of the White House and then some without permission. So right now, there's a woman who's facing 10 years in prison for doing what amounts to $1,000 in damages to the World War II memorial. What did she do? She shouldn't have done it, but I don't know. I think it was Tom Hanks, quite frankly. She sprayed paint and put soap in the fountain. It's going to cost $1,000 to fix this. While Donald Trump did $1 billion worth of damages to the White House. He brought in a demolition crew and began tearing down the White House. Have you seen what it looks like? The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit Court just ordered the ballroom construction to stop. He won't stop. No does not mean no to Donald Trump. The president was told by the courts, Congress must fund your $1 billion ballroom. No, he's still going. He refuses to stop. And our Attorney General, Todd Blanche, 2 days ago, literally said Donald Trump doesn't need congressional approval. He said Congress already gave it to him. This is what Todd Blanche said. He said, we don't believe we have to go to Congress because we believe Congress has already given us the authority to do what we're doing. What do you mean, us? You're the Attorney General. What do you mean, us? So Todd Blanche is the most corrupt Attorney General in American history. And yes, he's right. Presidents do major renovations on the White House all the time, and they don't need to go before Congress. There are public funds available. There's a 501c3 available. Presidents can use that money to do little upgrades. They got rid of the swimming pool by building a press briefing room on top of the swimming pool, a minor renovation. Or, creating the Rose Garden, which Trump has literally destroyed. He literally paved over the Rose Garden. Now, presidents make minor repairs without Congress's approval. What Trump is doing illegally is the largest White House renovation since Harry S. Truman, who went before Congress and got funding to gut the interior of the White House. This was a 4-year project that saved the White House from collapse. It was ordered by Congress. The Truman balcony, ordered by Congress. But as usual, Todd Blanche has no understanding of American history or the law. And he just lies with abandon, claiming Trump doesn't need permission. You do. Trump is now posting artificial intelligence generated photographs of himself standing with George Washington, giving our founding father a tour of the new ballroom with the father of our country looking on approvingly. Well, Donald Trump loves George Washington, and not just because Washington owned slaves. Trump loves Washington because in Washington's will, after he died, he refused to free his slaves. That's another reason Donald Trump loves George Washington. And here's something you're not allowed to teach in Florida. Turns out Washington didn't have wooden teeth. When I grew up, and most of us know that George Washington had wooden teeth. Why is that the thing we all know about George Washington, that he had wooden teeth? A lot of people back then had wooden teeth. But why do we know George Washington had wooden teeth? Because he didn't have wooden teeth. It was a lie. It was a cover-up. George Washington's false teeth were first yanked from a slave. Those were not wooden teeth. That was a slave's teeth. Those were the teeth of a slave. Our first president cannot teach that in Florida. Why do you hate America? Why do you have to bring that up? Well, Donald Trump loves George Washington. Here is, again, the actual AI-generated photo of Trump showing Washington the ballroom. And I added with my own AI, at least I think it's AI, maybe I time traveled. This is George Washington and Donald Trump talking inside the ballroom.
Shall we dance, Mr. President?
It would be my honor.
You're a natural.
And you are a fine partner. George Donald.
That cross-generational love. What more can you ask for? That is just bridging the centuries. Donald Trump loves George Washington. In fact, right now, to celebrate our 250th, outside Todd Blanche's Department of Justice, there's a gigantic banner of Trump that reads America First. This is a real banner outside the DOJ. It says America First, and it's a picture of Donald Trump. And right next to that banner is a banner of George Washington, and it reads America's First. So it's America First and America's First. So I changed it. It's America's Last and America's Last. No, I screwed that up. All right. Damn it. It was supposed to, the thing under George Washington was supposed to stay America's First, and then it was supposed to change under Trump and say America's Last. But I accidentally typed in America's Last under. It's a one-man operation, and it shows. God, that pisses me off. That was the one thing I was looking forward to. That was going to be the thing that made me happy. America's First, America's Last, and I screwed up. Well, again, some of you might be familiar with the person just arrested and charged with defacing the World War II memorial in Washington, D.C. And no, it's not Tom Hanks. The first thing I thought when I heard the World War II memorial, I figured it had to be Tom Hanks. So Donald Trump, a convicted felon, ordered U.S. Attorney Jean Pirro to prosecute this woman. They caught a woman defacing the memorial. He said, prosecute her to the full extent of the law, because you don't deface memorials in Washington, D.C., especially ones that honor the brave Americans who lost their lives serving our country. In 1964, Congress passed a law to build a memorial honoring President John Kennedy, who was tragically gunned down while serving as our nation's president. It remains one of the greatest traumas in American history, one many thought we'd never recover from. It's right up there with Donald Trump returning to the Oval Office, which is why it's only fitting Donald Trump, in the interest of efficiency, decided to put his name on the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Now, we've been over this, but through an act of Congress, the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts was created as a living memorial to our slain president. But Donald Trump thought, instead of building a memorial to me, like Ground Zero, that tragedy, why don't we just slap my name on the Kennedy Center and combine two tragic events into one? Well, Kennedy's presidency wasn't a tragic event. The way it ended was a tragic event. The way your presidency started, Mr. Trump, was a tragic event, and it's a tragedy that won't end. And that's why the courts said no. But Trump said no to the courts saying no. In May, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ordered Trump's name removed from the Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. And so Trump's name was removed. But Trump is appealing that decision, because with Trump, no doesn't mean no. Nothing stops him. As he said before the insurrection, you fight like hell, otherwise you don't have a country left anymore. So while the renaming of the Kennedy Center winds its way through the courts, because it's not like our courts have anything better to think about, Trump, in direct defiance of the circuit court, ordered an inscription to be placed on the Kennedy Center that includes the words, "Renovated by President Trump." There is a woman currently charged with defacing the World War II memorial. She faces 10 years in prison for spray painting the memorial and putting detergent in the fountain. Okay? It cost $1,000 to clean up the mess she made. She shouldn't do that. My father served in World War II. So did President Kennedy. So when you deface the World War II memorial, you're defacing President Kennedy, who nearly died in the Pacific. When you deface the World War II memorial, it's defacing the memory of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And kind of not as bad, though, as the way Donald Trump is defacing the memory of President John F. Kennedy by insisting that his name go on the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. I know you should not laugh at the clinically and criminally insane. It was during the Victorian period. The British like to visit insane asylums and laugh at the insane. That was like theater for the British. Yeah, I shouldn't be laughing at Donald Trump's clinical insanity, paranoid schizophrenia with delusions of grandeur. I know most of my podcast brethren obey the gold water rule and refuse to do armchair psychoanalysis. I'm disobeying the gold water rule. Donald Trump is a paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur. Who puts their name on the Kennedy Memorial? Who does that? First, he did it. His name went. It was the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. And this week, even though the court said your name has to stay off, he's putting it back on. First, he wants it to be first. He wants it to be the Donald J. Trump and John F. Kennedy Memorial Center. So why first? What's Trump thinking? Because Trump survived 2 assassination attempts. Kennedy couldn't even survive 1. Kennedy's a loser. I go first. Who does this? Who does this? Trump. And there are people in this country who find it to be an admirable trait. Psychosis is an admirable trait. Nothing can stop him. And some people in America say, isn't that great? I have friends who say they wish they could be like Trump because he refuses to take no for an answer. You know who does that? Rapists refuse to take no for an answer. That's who refuses to take no for an answer. Rapists. E. Jean Carroll said Donald Trump raped her. 2 years ago, a jury ruled it was sexual abuse and awarded her $5 million in civil damages. Trump, after the verdict, refused to take no for an answer. I want you to think about this because we have a new ruling this week. On June 29th, well, I'll get to the latest ruling. On June 29th, the Supreme Court, that would be the highest law in the land, the Supreme Court refused to grant Donald Trump an appeal on the E. Jean Carroll verdict. That was, we were led to believe, the end of the story. And so the more than $5 million Trump was ordered to place into escrow after the initial verdict, the ruling was you can appeal this, but you have to put $5 million in escrow, which will, and as the interest builds up, you're going to have to pay E. Jean Carroll. Now I think it was up to $5.5 million. So as you make your appeals, that money accrues interest, and you can have it all back if this ruling is overturned. It wasn't. The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, said, no, we're not hearing the appeal. The money in escrow, it was about $5.5 million, had to be released to E. Jean Carroll. Court said it's over, and she got the money. She got about $5.5 million. Trump immediately sued E. Jean Carroll to claw back that money. He filed another motion as well before the Supreme Court, asking the court to appeal their decision. And yesterday, the Supreme Court said to Donald Trump and his lawyers, what part of no don't you understand? Seems to me if you're trying to prove you're not a rapist, at some point it might be a smart idea to prove that you understand the meaning of no, that you understand no means no. No, doesn't mean no to Donald Trump. No. Early last year, ICE accidentally shipped Kilmar Ábrego García, a Maryland El Salvador national. He was from El Salvador, living legally in the United States, but ICE made a mistake. They kidnapped him accidentally and shipped him off to that torture chamber in El Salvador, despite a judge 6 years earlier ruling that under no circumstances can Ábrego García be sent back to El Salvador. It won't be safe for him. So ICE said, oops, we made a mistake. It was a humiliating mistake for ICE, Homeland Security, and the White House. Garcia was eventually released from the El Salvadoran prison, but under no circumstances could someone who proved how incompetent and careless the Trump administration was, he could not be allowed to go free. He was too much of a political liability. The Justice Department had to prove that ICE only detained and deported the worst of the worst. And they insisted that he belonged in that torture chamber. Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem called him a gangbanger, a drug dealer, a child predator, a child pornographer, that he belonged in that torture chamber. They were all lies, all lies. What do you do if you're if you're the Trump administration and you've been humiliated? Upon Garcia's return, they indicted him for human smuggling, all based on a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee where a state trooper pulled Garcia over, noticed Spanish-speaking people in the car. The state trooper immediately contacted Homeland Security. Homeland Security immediately said, let Garcia go. There's nothing to worry about. They checked his record, and the state trooper let him go. From that traffic stop, federal prosecutors indicted Garcia. That was in May of 2025. That was a year ago. And a year later, May of this year, think of the torture. We sent him to a torture chamber in El Salvador, and we've been torturing him since his return. So he's indicted for human smuggling in May of 2025. A year later, in May of this year, U.S. District Judge Waverly Crenshaw not only dismissed the indictment, but called it vindictive. He said the DOJ was punishing Garcia for embarrassing the Trump administration, for embarrassing ICE. He did it by allowing himself to get wrongly deported. That's what the judge said when he threw out this indictment. He called it vindictive. Now, one would think the Trump administration would want to put the Garcia case behind them because it draws attention not just to the cruelty, but the lawlessness of our Department of Homeland Security, which put Garcia on a plane to El Salvador, even though a judge, Judge Boasberg, ordered those planes not to take off. They took off anyway. They landed in El Salvador anyway. The Ábrego García case serves as the crucible where the corruption, lawlessness, deceit, and sadism baked into Trump's Justice Department and Department of Homeland Security. It's where it all bubbles together in the Garcia case. Instead of trying to put this behind them and pretend it never happened, Donald Trump refuses to take the word no. This week, Todd Blanche, his Justice Department, this is our Attorney General, asked the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit to overrule the lower court ruling and allow the Justice Department to continue their criminal prosecution of Ábrego García for human smuggling. This despite the case getting thrown out specifically because it was deemed vindictive because of Todd Blanche. You would think Todd Blanche would try to put this behind him because it shows how stupid he is. The judge who tossed out the case said it was Todd Blanche who proved it was vindictive prosecution. Partly when Blanche went on Fox News last year and said he ordered an investigation into Garcia the minute Garcia was released from that El Salvadoran torture chamber and returned to the United States. He ordered that is vindictive. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to just go find something on this guy. It's not allowed. Todd Blanche, memos from the DOJ reveal that indicting Garcia upon his return from El Salvador was the Justice Department's top priority. Who wrote those memos? Todd Blanche. This gets you disbarred. If you're number two in the Justice Department, you're not supposed to go fishing for an indictment. They find anything was the order from Todd Blanche. It is the definition of vindictive prosecution, going out of your way to find a crime for the sole reason of prosecuting someone. As you know, all of us commit crimes at least once a day. We all commit, there's so many laws we can be found guilty of. We're protected by laws that prevent vindictive prosecution. Judge Crenshaw, who threw the case out, wrote Garcia was indicted so that ICE could claim they found a bad guy. He wrote, this is Judge Crenshaw, he said, by indicting Garcia, the second Garcia returned from that El Salvadoran torture chamber, the Trump administration wouldn't have Garcia free to wander around the country talking about his illegal and wrongful kidnapping. That's why they continue to torture this guy and indict him. It's the process which becomes the punishment. Just keep Garcia up on the ropes, taking punches, so some people believe he deserved to be deported. Second quarter earnings are in, and they show huge numbers for America's two largest for-profit ICE detention corporations. They were also huge contributors to Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Geo Group, America's largest for-profit prison company, booked a 27% increase in second quarter revenue. They reported a 50% increase in ICE contracts over the first quarter of this year. CoreCivic reporting a 15% second quarter revenue bump, citing its contracts with ICE. According to their second quarter profits, both for-profit corporations are getting, on average, $120 per day per detainee, and it can go as high as $160 a day. And many ICE contracts with Geo Group and CoreCivic have a guaranteed minimum, meaning these companies get paid whether the beds are full or not. And then if they are full, they get top-offs, they get bonuses. So it is in the best interest of the for-profit detention centers to keep you, an American citizen, accidentally detained behind bars for as long as possible. If you're, now I'm not talking about Garcia here, who is legally in this country, but he's not an American citizen. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about Americans who look and sound like they're not white. If you're an American citizen accidentally detained on a Kavanaugh stop because you sound or look, let's say, Hispanic or Muslim, they will not release you automatically once they see proof of their mistake, because there's no effing money in that. So what do? When we're reading about this, they delay your phone call to your family and your lawyer, if you're lucky enough to be able to afford a lawyer. And then, because they're good at what they do, CoreCivic and Geo Group make it impossible for your lawyer and your family to contact the for-profit detention center in order to show up and bring proof that you're a citizen. Delay. Because the longer they can accidentally keep you behind bars, the more they can bill the government. And that is what's happening. That is what is happening. I'm talking about American citizens. Oswald Jose Perella is not an American citizen. He's a pitching coach. I'm sorry, I think he helps catchers. I think he's a catching coach for the San Diego Padres. He remains in ICE custody tonight after being arrested at an El Paso, Texas airport. Perella, San Diego Padres, came to the United States from Venezuela in 2014, sought asylum, and was given a work authorization that remains completely up to date. He wasn't carrying it with him, and that's why he was arrested at the airport in El Paso, Texas. Perella is married, has 2 children, both are American citizens, no criminal record, no arrest record. He coaches the San Diego Padres. Flying from Arizona to El Paso, he wasn't carrying his work authorization, and now he remains behind bars in the notorious El Paso Processing Center. Now, this is an ICE-run prison. It's run by ICE. But 80% of its staff works for private prison contractors, not to mention the food and medical services not provided by outside for-profit contractors. When you bring in outside for-profit contractors to provide food and medical services, it means there's no food and no medical services. There's a lot of money to keep Perella behind bars for as long as possible. How many billions did one big beautiful bill bestow upon the monsters from ICE? They have computers, right? They can find his work authorization online. You don't have to carry your work authorization with you at all times. It's online. Doesn't matter. Stephen Miller said he wants 3,000 locked up every day. He said, I want 3,000 immigrants locked up every day. The fascists hate quotas for people of color when it comes to hiring or admission to college. But they have no problem with quotas when it comes to arresting people of color. Well, ICE has unveiled plans to issue all its agents shock gloves that produce small jolts of electricity while attempting to arrest a suspect. Yes, shock gloves. They first came to Homeland Security's attention when Border Czar Tom Homan was using one to masturbate his first cousin. This is true. That's how they discovered shock gloves. They caught Tom Homan, Border Czar, using one of those shock gloves to masturbate his first cousin. And they thought, hey, why don't we use this to apprehend innocent people of color? Shock gloves. Now, some experts are saying that as more ICE agents are about to be fitted with body cams, shock gloves will make it more difficult to determine, when we look at the footage, whether an ICE agent used excessive force. Shock gloves. This is, you can say, no, that 80-year-old grandmother tripped. That's why she fell to the ground, writhing in pain. Why would I shoot electricity into a 90-year-old woman just because she asked to see my badge? Why would I do that? She fell. I didn't use Tom Homan's masturbation glove. Shock gloves. This is the... I just have a question. Has Tom Homan ever not paid for sex? I'm just curious. Has he ever not paid for sex? That's our border czar, carrying around a bag with $50,000 in it. Caught on tape. Border czar Tom Homan. This is the mop-up. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to share. I'm not done. I'm just reminding you to share this episode and hit the like button. They're throttling me back. For shows like this, for some reason, aren't getting the exposed. So hit your notification bells. Make sure all your notifications are turned on for the David Feldman Show. That way, when I go live, you'll know. So turn on all your notifications and watch the show, share it, subscribe to my newsletter. I also, let me just go over some important stuff here. Where is it? I have important stuff about the show that I must get to. Here we go. If you would like show prep, go to davidfeldmanshow.com and you can get all the notes. It's called Show. I changed the name. It used to be called The Big Dig. Now it's called Show Prep, and you can just host your own show with my seriously, just take my notes and host your own show. Go to davidfeldmanshow.com. You can contact me over at davidfeldmanshow.com. And I'm going to get back to the show in a second. I just want to remind you, you're watching The David Feldman Show or listening to The David Feldman Show. Leave a comment if I made any mistakes on today's program. Correct me. I issue corrections on this program. And subscribe to my newsletter and join my fan club. I have a fan club. I am the president pro tem, the permanent president pro tem of the David Feldman Show fan club. This is the lull in the show, but we're back. Okay. War criminal and defense chief Pete Hegseth, that's him slathered in neo-Nazi tattoos. Pete Hegseth on Monday was campaigning for Republican candidates in Iowa. Iowa is still the first race on the road to the Republican presidential nomination, and some suggesting Pete Hegseth is now testing the waters for a possible run in 2028. It's good to see our defense chief out on the campaign trail. He was purportedly out there for seeing if he can be president. I guess after losing Iran, he's now looking for someplace else to be defeated. Good to see our defense chief out there on the campaign trail. I'm sure the Marines and sailors on board the USS Abraham Lincoln eating dog food will be comforted to learn where they fit in our Pentagon chief's priorities. Just in case you're keeping score of Pete Hegseth's crimes, the Hatch Act, passed in 1939, forbids all government employees, especially the Secretary of Defense, from participating in any campaign activity. It's not good for the guy in charge of the Army to try to influence elections. So it's forbidden, not just by the Hatch Act, but other Defense Department rules. The Defense Department specifically forbids the defense chief from using his office, government vehicles for political purposes. That is why, up until Pete Hegseth, no defense chief in American history ever hit the campaign trail. No serving defense chief. Afterwards, they're free to hit the campaign. After they're no longer defense chief and cashing big checks from Raytheon, they're free to go on the campaign trail. But no defense chief, no active defense chief until Pete Hegseth ever hit the campaign trail. He's been doing it since he was sworn in. Hegseth flew to Iowa on a government-funded jet. That's what it was government-funded. He said, as defense chief, he's only permitted to fly on tax-funded Army jets. This is what he said. I'm only allowed to fly all the time on tax-funded Army jets because my communications at all times must be secure. You mean like back in March of 2025 during the bombing campaign over Yemen when you got on an unsecured group signal chat and began releasing classified coordinates 2 to 4 hours before the airstrikes? You gave out the time, the date, the hour, the location of where our jets and pilots would be striking. And then you set up another unsecured group signal chat to provide the same exact information to your wife, your brother, and your personal lawyer. You mean those secure communications for classified material? That is what you call violating the Espionage Act. We all know the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians are reading those unsecured chats, but Hegseth insisted I've been completely exonerated. Why? Because he said, quote, "We bombed the Houthis into submission." Yes, you bombed the Houthis into submission the same way you've bombed the Iranians into submission. So this was back in March of 2025. And he claims it's okay that I shared classified material on 2 separate unsecured group signal chats. One chat consisting of my wife, my brother, and my personal lawyer. He said it's okay because we bombed the Houthis into submission. Ask the Saudis and the Israelis how you bombed the Houthis into submission. Ask the Egyptian and Saudi ships. Ask them. Last week, trying to go through the Bab el-Mandab Strait about what a great job you did bombing the Houthis into submission. But there was Pete Hegseth in Iowa testing the political waters for a presidential run. Well, I guess any man delusional enough to think bombing Iran would end well, I guess he would also be delusional enough to think he's qualified to be president. Pete Hegseth is that perfect blend of toxic male impotence mixed with alcohol fear that masquerades as arrogance, stupidity posing as confidence, all folded into a genetic predisposition towards cruelty, bigotry, hatred of women, all of which is papered over by a counterfeit Christianity comprised of nothing more than cherry pickings from the Old Testament. Tell me one thing Jesus ever said that justifies your behavior. Pete Hegseth, seen here, slathered in some of his neo-Nazi tattoos. He was crapping on trans soldiers during his campaign appearance. He was literally crapping on American soldiers during the campaign stop. We all know what's going on, what he's doing to our soldiers. It's not just the trans soldiers he's dishonoring. We all know about the mental health crisis on board the USS Abraham Lincoln. Dog food, 250 days with no shore leave. They're finally getting shore leave. No soap, no toothpaste, shortages of potable water, and little to no sanitation. Pete Hegseth calls that a lie. Donald Trump says it's a lie. He said 250 days isn't enough, that they should be out there longer. We are now discovering more about how Trump and Hegseth serve as stewards of our military, who they hide behind. We're discovering that the USS Gerald Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the world, was finally sent home after 300 straight days without rest. Their toilet systems broke down. There was damage to the fires. It was a nightmare. The USS Benfold. Is that named after Benfold's Five? I don't know. What USS Benfold? A guided missile destroyer in the South China Sea, we now discover went 4 days without air conditioning, toilets, and power. But there was Pete Hegseth in Iowa testing the presidential waters because that's the only water he feels safe on. It's not like Hegseth's going to go visit any of our sailors stranded at sea and expect to be welcomed with open arms. Hey, there's the alcoholic who says we're lying about conditions on our ship. Welcome aboard. Can I interest you in a lukewarm plate of kibbles and bit? The man should be arrested. He's a war criminal. Pete Hegseth is a war criminal. Well, on Monday, the 60-day truce between the United States and Iran expired. Trump acknowledged that he failed to secure a permanent peace. And then he said, I am now commanding Iran to wave the white flag of surrender. And Iran said, yeah, it's on its way. We're about to do that. No, Iran responded by essentially telling Trump, you are no longer relevant. Jared Kushner, for some reason, is the peace delegate, and now he's giving interviews saying, well, we're getting offers from the Iranians. No, you're not. He says Trump doesn't want to rush into it. Yeah, doesn't want, because he always weighs all his options first. He would never rush into anything like deciding to attack Iran on February 20th and then commence bombing on February 28th. He doesn't rush in to anything. Well, here's where it gets a little scary. A little scary. It is dawning on the Iranians, they are winning, that the United States lacks the ammunition, the allies, and the political will to finish this. All the things Trump was warned about on February 27th, the day before he rushed into this. And again, this is where it's pretty serious. On the last show, I went over one of the most underreported stories of this war. That story being on day one, on February 28th, possibly March 1st, Iran incapacitated America's only naval base in the Middle East. It's in Bahrain. And they did serious damage to our only naval base in the Middle East on day one and continued all the way up until June, making our only distribution hub for ships in the region no longer operational. That is why the USS Abraham Lincoln doesn't have enough food, water, or sanitation. This is why they can't get shore leave, because with our only naval base in the Middle East rendered incapacitated by the Iranians, our ships blockading Hormuz must be resupplied by our naval base 2,200 miles away in Ábrego García. See that? That's why our ships our sailors are on suicide watch. But nobody's telling you that on day one, Iran destroyed our only naval base in the Middle East. There are two concerns here, and they're very serious. One involves Iran and the other concerns Russia. Okay? So, what if Iran, which is feeling feisty, I mean, they know we don't have the political will, we're not going to commit ground troops, and we're out of ammunition. What if Iran decides to launch a ground invasion? Now, why would they do that? Iran is predominantly Shiite. Our naval base in Bahrain has a huge Shia population. So does Kuwait. So does Iraq. The Houthis in Yemen, also Shia. So what if, to humiliate Donald Trump and the United States, Iran decides to go into Kuwait via Iraq, maybe to reclaim some waterways it lost during that war with Saddam Hussein in the 80s, or just to poke the bear, to humiliate Trump? You know, we're pulling out of Iraq now. Our soldiers are finally leaving Iraq. And Iran is saying, we want all the troops stationed in the Persian Gulf out of there. Well, what if we can't defend our troops? What if? I'm asking you, who is the big dog in that region? It used to be the United States because we never showed our hand. Are we still the big dog in the Persian Gulf? Who guarantees the security for all the Persian Gulf states Iran attacked right after we launched the February 28th missile launches? What that did was we exposed our limitations because we being Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, they didn't listen to everybody else who said, you cannot stir up this hornet's nest without allies. What if they close Hormuz? And Hegseth said, they won't. I prayed. Pastor Doug and I prayed that they wouldn't close Hormuz. So they're not going to. They said it's never going to happen. Iran, despite 20,000 bombs dropped on it this year by the United States and Israel, is remarkably resilient. And they are supplying Russia with drone and missile technology while they're fighting the United States. Ukraine attacked an Iranian ship last month in the Caspian Sea because that ship was Iranian and it was believed to be delivering weapons to Russia. See what's going on here? It's not Russia helping Iran. It's Iran helping Russia. So this is a problem. Trump can claim that he won. What are we going to do if Iran pokes at us, pokes at Kuwait, pokes at Iraq, pokes at Bahrain with troops, begins seizing land, islands in the Persian Gulf? You see how well it's going. We can't get Hormuz opened because we would be sitting ducks. What are we going to do? So that's the first problem, and it's very serious. And this is why you don't put cretins, religious cretins, like Pete Hegseth in charge of your Defense Department or Donald Trump. Okay, that's the first problem. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that U.S. intelligence is now telling Donald Trump that they expect Putin to test NATO's resolve earlier this fall, or at least very soon, by launching some kind of attack on one of the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or Poland. These are NATO countries. Any attack on one is an attack on all. And it's not just U.S. intelligence warning Putin might move on Eastern Europe. Analysts inside the American Enterprise Institute, that's a conservative think tank, as well as German Army Chief Lieutenant General Christian Freuding, are openly warning that sometime before or right after our next presidential election, Putin is going to test NATO. We have a president who hates NATO, has always been suspect. Trump has always complained about Article 5, which forces America to fight Russia should it invade any NATO country. Trump has repeatedly said, really, we're going to have to fight Russia because they attacked Latvia? Our relations with Russia have always been on the knife's edge since and after the Cold War. Russia can destroy the world. They have the nuclear warheads. We can destroy the world. We have the nuclear warheads. So behind the scenes, through back channels, historically, Russia and the United States test each other to see how close to the brink we can take it without falling over. Russia does not have America's economic power, but it does have expansionist ambitions. And Russia wants to seize all the land around it with key resources. What do you think Putin's doing in the Donbass region? You think it's to protect Russian speakers stuck in Ukraine? We have interests in land with key resources. This is why Besant is signing deals, rare earth deals with Zelensky in Ukraine. This is why they want to seize Greenland. It's a game where people end up dead, and we push each other back and forth to see what each side can get away with. It is a game of high-stakes poker that has been going on since the end of World War II. It's high-stakes poker. Donald Trump doesn't play poker, and that is why he has showed America's hand to Putin. What we did in Iran was handing our cards over to Putin. Now, there are treaties. This is why it's this Barbara Tuchman, The Guns of August. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis ordered everybody to read The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman because World War I, according to Barbara Tuchman, just meandered into a catastrophe because people were just obeying treaties and alliances. And we have treaties and alliances that America cannot ignore. One of Trump's legacies, of which there are many, is the complete destruction of the post-World War II order. Look at the White House. He's a wrecking ball. People who want to destroy things, like the planet, like our neighbors, the economy, the middle class, our Constitution, they gravitate to Trump because they can remake the world in their image after he destroys it. Trump is stupid. But he's got the instincts of a kleptocrat who knows how to steal everything, including history. And one of the reasons I try to chronicle all his lies is because when things get really bad in a society, the truth becomes a non-negotiable. And by a non-negotiable, you cannot tell it. If things get so bad in this country, we will embrace whatever new world order is imposed on us by Donald Trump because humans hate chaos, the very thing Donald Trump thrives off and creates. Create chaos and then promise order. That's why the truth must be verboten. We have, right now, a Department of Justice, right now, going before a grand jury in Florida, making the case that January 6th was a false flag operation instigated by a corrupt FBI. You don't need proof. You just need evidence. Evidence isn't proof. But in politics, evidence is enough proof to make the case for Trump. You have an attorney general who says there's tons of evidence that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. He has no proof. He says he has evidence. That's why they're seizing ballots, for evidence, not proof, evidence. Most Americans confuse evidence with proof, especially when you're living in a semi-authoritarian state where a lot of people are willing to allow Todd, Blanche, and Donald Trump to be the judge, jury, and executioner. Donald Trump refuses to take no for an answer. He refused to accept the 2020 presidential election results. If the midterms don't go his way, he will refuse to accept any Democratic Party winning control of either the House, the Senate, or both. He will call it our fraudulent legislative branch and convince, or try to convince, just enough Americans it's not worth keeping. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong, protect the weak, and vote. Register to vote. Get like-minded people, Democrats, to vote. If you live in a district where you've got somebody who's Nancy Pelosi light, you vote for Nancy Pelosi. This is not the time to not vote for a Democrat. You can fight before they get the nomination, but once they get the nomination, you vote for them. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Please help me out here by liking this episode, subscribing to my channel, turn your notification bells on so you can always find this. If I made any mistakes, please correct me. I issue corrections on this show. If you would like to read the prep that goes into this show, go to davidfeldmanshow.com, hit the menu entitled Show Prep, and you can get the notes to this show by clicking on Show Notes. And then you can download the show notes free of charge and use them to host your own show. I'm giving you all the ammunition you need to help us win. Go to davidfeldmanshow.com, join my fan club. You can contact, there's like a fruit fly, Drosophila, I believe is what you call a fruit fly. Drosophila, they breed very quickly, fruit flies. And I'm drawing fruit flies. What was I talking about? Contact me at davidfeldmanshow.com and join my fan club over at davidfeldmanshow.com. We're going to do some meetups a little later on, after the summer, as we get into the midterms. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to Bob and Mila. I love this. That's pretty great. Bye.